Hello everyone, my name is Take Kayo and welcome to BHD Studios. Today we'll be doing an unboxing and first impressions of the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 DCDN contemporary lens. Now this is Sigma's first mirrorless exclusive APS-C standard zoom lens, but it's fast, f2.8 constant, and it joins the trio of 16, 30, and 56mm f1.4 prime lenses that Sigma announced earlier this year. But this lens is a year old. It was announced, I think, last year, October, as an E mount and L mount. And so if you do want to see specific reviews on the optics of this lens, you can search for it. But this one here is for Fujifilm X mount, and the key design feature of this lens is its compact size. And even just looking at this box, you can tell this is going to be a compact lens. And so let's do the unboxing, and then we'll do my first impressions of this lens. And before we begin the unboxing, I'd like to thank Sigma USA that actually got Sigma Japan, the HQ of Sigma, to send this lens directly to me. So thank you so much for arranging that, and I'm really excited to be able to start reviewing Sigma lenses. So let's start the unboxing now. So let's just quickly look around the box here. Very simple packaging. I think the 021 means it's a 2001 design, but this lens is coming out in 2022. 2001, did I say? 2021, but 2002, but of course in Fujifilm X mount. So let's open this up here. And very simple packaging, I like it. And what do we have here? So to start off with some basic, man, it seems like this packaging, this isn't the first Sigma lens I've ever used or even bought, but still very simple and very similar packaging. So multiple languages, lots of fold out. I guess you can kind of carry this with you, but I think most of us just kind of keep this in the box. And what is this? Warranty information. All right, so let's just start. That's all you get there. And here is the lens. Okay, so you get a decent lens hood, kind of that pedal style, and it looks like there's some kind of a ribbing here. I'm not sure if it comes apart. Nope, it doesn't come apart, but looks pretty decent. And man alive, this lens is tiny. Look at that lens. All right, so let's just move some of this stuff out of the way, and then we will. All right, now we will begin. Look at this lens. That is compact and that is light. And so you get a rear cap, you get a front cap, very simple. You can either pinch it in here or pinch it over here. And even the front here, you could tell it's kind of a simple, very subtle. It's almost kind of, depending on the angle, it almost disappears. So you can see all that information over there. It's a 55mm filter thread, which is great. I have a lot of 55mm filter threads, and you know, look right there, made in Japan. It's like it's a feature of this lens, and it all kind of repeats over here. 18-50 and 55mm filter thread. The first thing I noticed as a Fujifilm X mount shooter is that the zoom ring is in the front and then the focus ring is in the back, and that's something that I noticed with the Tamron as well. As a Fujifilm X mount shooter, usually this is the aperture ring. You will have a zoom and then the focus ring is in the front. So that's something you kind of have to get used to, but nice dampened. I like the focus feel of this. Nice sort of a throw. Focus by wire, you could tell like this. And I'm pretty sure this is a variofocal zoom. It's not a parfocal. And on the back here, one of the features, it does say weather sealing. And a lot of people kind of point to this. There is a gasket here. And so the front, it's hard to tell if there's much weather sealing in here, but definitely at the mount, which for me is the most important thing, there's a gasket here, and so it keeps the most sensitive part of your camera, which is basically where the sensor is and where your shutter is. It is weather sealed, which is awesome. And this is a brass mount over here. And so let's go over some of the features here. It is basically a 27 to 75mm equivalent in full frame. and size 61.6 by 76.8 millimeters. So that's very compact compared to the 18 to 55 from Fujifilm. It's this is a little bit the diameter is less, but it's a little bit longer than the 18 to 55, which is probably the lens that most people will compare this to, because you know, it's a standard zoom lens that Fujifilm. It's probably the best zoom lens, the standard kit zoom lens from any manufacturer. Now the Fujifilm is 18 to 55, so you get a little bit more range on the top end. It's 65 by 70 millimeters, so again a little bit shorter than this lens here. With a 58 millimeter filter thread, we're talking about the Fujifilm lens still, and it's 310 grams. So this is actually lighter than the Fujifilm kit lens. In terms of price, it's $699 for the Fujifilm kit lens, $549 US. So same price as the Sony lens. So it's actually cheaper, and it's f2.8. Where the Fujifilm starts at f2.8 at 18, and then it goes to f4 by the time you zoom out to 55. And so that's the beauty of this lens. It's a f2.8 constant, and it is like lighter than the Fujifilm. And it is, I mean, is it more compact? It's about the same size. Again, a little bit narrower, but a little bit longer. I wish I had the 18 to 55 with me, but I do not, because I don't really need that lens. But I think those of you that with that standard kit lens and you want an upgrade, I think this might be the lens for you. And another lens a lot of people will compare this to is the Tamron, which I do have. This is Tamron's 17 to 70, and you can see that huge size difference. I'll take off the lens hood here, but look at that, and the lens cap as well. Look at that, oh, might as well take off the rear cap, so you get a true sense of the size difference between these two lenses. It's not a really fair comparison though, because this is a 17 to 70, an 18 to 50, so you're getting more range with this. This lens claims to be fully weather sealed versus this, maybe it's just in the front here. It's hard to say. There isn't a lot of information on how weather sealed both of these lenses are. But this also has optical image stabilization here, where this lens does not. But again, the design feature of this lens is to keep it as compact and lightweight as possible, while still having a constant f2.8 range throughout the entire focal range on this lens. And so I think the compromise of not having OIS is worth it if you can make it this small. And so I have another review of this lens here, so check out Fujilove. I have an article as well. I think I have a YouTube video on this lens. If not, I will be coming out with it. But thoroughly impressed with this lens, but I'm equally impressed with this lens. A lot of it's just the size. I mean, look how small this lens is here. And I have another lens here from Fujifilm. It's on the XT100, and that's the 15 to 45 lens, and it's not much different, is it? Look at that difference here. But this is an f2.8 constant. This is a 15 to 45, so you know, a usable focal range, but it's 3.5 to 5.6. This is f2.8, so I mean, look at that size difference. Again, not a fair comparison, but still, I think it's pretty sweet that that they can have this as a constant aperture. And so it actually is heavier than it looks, but still not overly heavy for a lens like this. In terms of price, again, $549 for the Sigma lens. Fujifilm's 18 to 55 is $699, although when it's with a body, like a kit, like the XS10, it's about $400 for that lens when it is as a kit. But I think $549 for this lens, USD, is a great deal. And with this Tamron here, it's $799 for the Tamron lens, and so obviously there's a big price difference, but again, wider range, it's a bigger lens. And so, you know, for street photography, my conclusion was I don't like the length of this for street photography. It's great for everything else, for travel and for nature and all these things, but just this lens being this big, kind of a beer can shape, not ideal for street photography. But this lens here, I mean, look at that. I think it'd be perfect for street photography. So I see the price difference, I think, is reasonable, the difference that you're paying. But for those of you looking for light and compact, that's what you're getting with this Sigma lens right here. Now in terms of design, it's 13 elements in 10 groups with 3 aspherical and 1 SLD glass element. So that must be super low dispersion glass to help with various optical issues. Rounded 7-blade diaphragm and a stepping motor for smooth and quiet autofocus. So this will be a great lens for video, and I think the Sony E-mount version, you probably see a lot of reviews on YouTube. We'll talk about how great this lens is for video, but I will test video features as well as still features. Now, one of another outstanding features of this lens is its minimum focus. Now, at 18 millimeter, you are getting 12.1 centimeter or 4.76 inches to the sensor plane. And so let's just mount this onto my XH1. And so let's just put this on here. I mean, look at that. It's a handsome looking lens, and I think even with the lens hood, with that ribbing I kind of showed you, it doesn't really do anything, I don't think. Maybe just to make it easier to take this on and off, but I actually think it's a pretty handsome looking lens here. Kind of monochromatic, all just white on this matte plastic. It's a nice feeling plastic. In fact, the plastic, Sigma calls it thermally stable composite or polycarbonate with thermal characteristics similar to aluminum. In the barrel construction with slim internal metal parts offer lightweight and functional strength. And so lots of plastic in here, but they're claiming that it acts a lot like aluminum, which probably means that under heat or fluctuations in temperature, it maintains its stability so it doesn't expand or contract too much. And so that again is more of a longevity thing. And if if this zooms smoothly while it gets warmer or it starts to cool down, but that's something I'm going to have to test. But zoom, this feels really nice as you zoom in and out. And continuing on about the minimum focus distance, it's 12.1 centimeters to the sensor plane. And so most cameras will have like a little, see that little circle with a line through it? That's telling you that's where the sensor plane is. And so 4.76 inches or 12.1 centimeters, it pretty much almost touches the front. In fact, Sigma recommends that you take the lens hood off if you want to use that 1 to 2.8 macro, which is very close. A lot of macro lenses are 1 to 2. And this is 1 to 2.8, but it is at the wider 18 millimeter focal length, but you're getting very close. Sigma says it is, what did they say? I think they said it's about just over an inch to the front if you do want to use the most minimum close focusing distance. So that'd be kind of fun to test, but again, at wide angles, so it's almost like an iPhone or a Ricoh GR kind of closeness for close focus. So that's pretty darn sweet without having to switch into a macro mode. So that's awesome. And as I mentioned earlier, there is something in here that it's not just a mount swap, but there is internal, you can see here, there are connections here. So XF data is shared with the body. There is going to be a different algorithm according to Sigma for autofocus. They said it's specifically made for the Fujifilm X mount, so you can go into the various manual, continuous, single shot mode, and I think that would also include if you are in single and you want manual focus override. So if you are in autofocus mode and you want to just kind of tweak that focus, you can just turn that. I'm going to have to test that to see if that works, but that should be what they mean by this is tweaked specifically for Fujifilm. And another one is in-camera aberration correction. And so they say it further it fixes some of the imperfections and distortion in vignetting, but it's based on the body. So again, I don't know if this will work on the XH1, so that's going to be something I'll have to test in comparison via probably Lightroom or Photoshop to see kind of the optical corrections that Sigma is making, but that's also great. I know one of the complaints of the E-mount version of this lens was there was a lot of sort of a purple and green fringing in the autofocus area, so that's again something I'd need to test. But again, the compromise of having some chromatic aberration, being able to be corrected in camera, to have such a light, compact lens like this, I think it's definitely worth that compromise if you can get that kind of optical performance in a lens this small. Now, if you are deciding, if you have the 18-55 from Fujifilm and you're deciding between the two, I think one of the key things is that this doesn't have OIS. Although on the 18-55, the OIS is just kind of okay. I've never felt that it was great. But if you have a body like an XH series or the XT4 or the new XT5 or the XS10, well then you're gonna get in-camera image stabilization anyway. So any of those cameras, no problem, you just pop this on. But you know, I think because of the size, let me just grab it for a second. I'll be right back. Now, hear me out for a second. I typically do not put zoom lenses on my X Pro 3, but it's so compact, this 18 to 50 lens, that it doesn't look out of place on here. Now, I sort of checked the specs of this lens. It's smaller and lighter than the new XF 23mm f1.4 prime, definitely smaller and more compact than the 18mm f1.4 prime. So in terms of just aesthetics, this is smaller and lighter than many of Fujifilm's prime lenses, and so it doesn't look that odd. And especially with this, again, this lens hood here, I think it looks kind of on brand. It doesn't look out of place. Now there is no OIS, again, as mentioned, but neither do those prime lenses have OIS, so that's not really a big deal, especially for daytime shooting, street shooting. Having something compact like this versus having a lens that juts out like this definitely will, I think, would work for daytime street photography, and at nighttime, well, just use the tripod. But going back to the Fujifilm 18 to 55 lens, if you're thinking of upgrading, so again, no OIS, but this does have WR on here, which the 18 to 55 does not have. And as well, you have that constant f2.8 where the Fujifilm goes from 2.8 to f4. So I think that's really the big thing here. So if you are going to be shooting video, if you're shooting at f2.8 and you're zooming in and out, you're not going to have any shift in exposure because it stays constant at f2.8. And if you're going to compare with this Tamron here, I've mentioned a few times already, but obviously the Sigma has less range, but with that you also get a much lighter and more compact lens and cheaper lens. And as well, there is no OIS, but again, if you have any camera with IBIS, then it's not a big deal that it doesn't have OIS. And for that compromise, I think it's definitely worth it for size, weight, and for price. And so, as I mentioned, I do need to run my own tests, but if you are in a hurry, please just go to YouTube and look for the E-mount version of this or the L-mount version, and you will have other reviews. But I would wait for my review or any reviewer, because you know they could have tweaked some things in here, and as well there are internal corrections for aberrations in here that's going to be done in body, but as well as different algorithms to help with autofocus, especially with the new X-T5. I'd be curious to see, or the XH2 or the XH2S, to see how this performs on those cameras. But great compact lens, and I think this will match really well with the XS10. And I think even with Sigma's literature, that's what they have this mounted. So imagine for kind of a run and gun video kit with the XS10 and this lens here, I think you have a killer combination. And so sales embargo on this lens in the X mount is December 2nd for North America. And so I don't know for the rest of the world, but North America, December 2nd, this will be ready for release. And I think this will be a very popular lens in the Fujifilm X mount. And it's now putting a lot of pressure on Fujifilm to either update the 18 to 55 2.8 to f4 by adding weather sealing, or if they can pull it off, make it f2.8 all the way through. And if Sigma can do it, definitely Fujifilm can as well. And having, you know, having Sigma, having the 3 prime lenses, and now with the zoom lens, as well as Tamron entering the game with their zoom lenses, Fujifilm, I'm actually shooting this video on the 16 to 80, which I love. Build quality wise, a lot more metal on the Fuji, not the XC lenses like this, but on the XF lenses, the 18 to 55 does have more metal. It does have an aperture ring, and everything's in the place where you want it, which is what we're used to, the zoom ring in the back, focus ring in the front. So you're gonna have to kind of get used to using either the Sigma or the Tamron, but I think if this is always on your camera, you're gonna really get used to the way this works. And of course, if you want to control the aperture, you'll need to set one of your custom function dials to do the aperture. It'd be cool if Sigma can find a way of, maybe if you can have this as a aperture ring, like a custom function. I don't know if Fujifilm will allow Sigma to use this as an FN dial, but you know, who knows, right? But anyways, that's my first impressions. which is I love it. Optically, I know this will be great, but I'm gonna run my own tests. Wait for my review on Fujilove as well, but wait for my full review on this lens. Thank you again, Sigma Japan and Sigma USA, for sending me this lens. Look forward to testing the 16, 30, and 56mm f1.4 contemporary lenses as well, but super excited to have this lens. Thanks for watching and happy shooting.